Welcome to the Dash Mindset Podcast. I'm Sherry Zievenbergen. You were born, you're gonna die, and your adventure is your dash in between. So make the most of it. Unlock your potential in all aspects of your dash by embracing your uniqueness and living in a way that's authentic to you, not by doing more things, but by focusing on the right things. I'm a former corporate leader turned coach who's on my own journey, and I'm passionate about helping you on your journey too. So on the podcast, we'll explore how to live authentically by deciphering who you truly are and what you truly want. Are you ready to take a step toward designing your dash? Someday doesn't actually exist, so let's do it now.
Hello, everyone. This is Sherry Z. Thank you so much for being here for the Dash Mindset Podcast. I'm really excited today to have my friend. I think we're friends, right, Michael? I'm not being presumptuous. My friend, Michael White, with me. So I met Michael a couple of years ago, and he's going to be very inspiring for you today, I think. He is a business analyst and or BA, for those of you who are familiar with the business analysis arena. And he's the founder of the Business Analysis Doctor. So I had not even considered that there might be specific training around business analysis. And I've worked with a lot of business analysts in my life. So I just really wanted to have Michael come on and share with you, because if you are not a business analyst, it might be likely that you've worked with one or at least are familiar with that world. So, and even if you aren't, this will be interesting. So Michael, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you here. So I would like you to, if you could, tell a little bit about yourself, because that was just a very small blip of you. And I would love for you to share a little bit about your background, what you do, and your journey. And then I'll ask you lots of questions along the way.
Yes, thank you so much, Sherry, for that. Like you mentioned earlier, I'm the founder and CEO of the Business Analysis Doctor. So we provide business analysis training for BAs all over the world, focusing on hands-on business analysis training as well as BA certification training administered through IIBA. So most of the time when people do take business analysis training, it is for some type of certification. So a lot of it is exam-based or theoretical. So while I do specialize in that as well, I have a passion for the more practical, hands-on business analysis training as well, because I feel like that's where people struggle the most. You know, people who are in the business analysis space, they're often not confident. They often have imposter syndrome. And one of the best ways to get over that is to do certain activities and get that feedback and validation that you're doing it correctly. Because consuming information is one thing, but actually doing it and knowing that you are applying it correctly is a whole nother level. So that's pretty much how I operate. Even in my certification training, I incorporate some of those hands-on activities as well, because it just uses a different part of the brain and helps you learn more. So with that, I do the certification training, the coaching. But in terms of my journey, I've always been a learner. I love to learn. I've always loved school, first of all. So even way back into school, I've always been the teacher's pet or the person who
I was going to say, I don't know that I've ever heard anyone say those words. I've always loved school. Anyway, go ahead.
I've always loved school, the teacher's pet, extra credit, all that stuff. But as I moved into my career, it turned into something different where, I would always be the one asking different questions, or I would say challenging status quo, like not necessarily in a bad way, but just questioning why things were done a certain way. And it would often lead to the powers that be as saying, well, why do we do this? Maybe we should look at making a change, or can you suggest a better way? That type of thing. And it turned into me being, in most cases, just an employee, but I was always chosen to train the new people that came in behind me. Regardless of whether or not I switched departments, I would be the trainer, the unofficial trainer, right? And so that just became like a thing. And I noticed this pattern, and it wasn't a pattern that I necessarily wanted. It just was a pattern that happened. And I was like, okay, why does this keep happening? And I liked it, but I also wanted to understand why I was always chosen to train other people. And
because you weren't actively thinking, oh, wait, now I want to become a trainer. It's just what you naturally do. And you just noticed it and decided, maybe I just need to understand the why behind it, right?
Yes, exactly. And, because how I learn is when I'm learning something, I'm asking several different questions. I'm taking notes. I'm creating resources for myself so that I can refer back to something. I think what it is I like independence. So for me, instead of having a supervisor or someone that I'm constantly asking questions to like daily, I'll ask you once or twice, document it, and then refer back to it when I need it. So I think when my leadership noticed that and they realized that it made their lives easier, they wanted to replicate that. So they had me train the people that came in after me so that they can learn to be independent as well. That's really just the hypothesis that I have about it. As to why that pattern kept occurring.
And also, I think a lot of leaders, and just people in general, actually, not specifically leaders, but taking time to train, that takes a lot of patience. And if you are just naturally good at it, why not? I'm realizing, Michael, can you explain? I'm taking for granted that people know what business analysis is because, it was just kind of I didn't do business analysis, but it was just part of my world for a long time. Can you just give a high-level overview of what the heck business analysis is for anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah. So essentially, business analysis is understanding, first of all, various organizational problems or goals that the organization has, taking that information, analyzing it, finding the source of that problem, and then looking for solutions to address it. Like if that's like the, very high level, that's it. Identifying a problem, documenting the problem, and then looking for solutions to solve that problem, right? Of course, there's way more involved, right? There's the, like I said, the root cause analysis, and there's documenting it. Then there's identifying the current state, working to define the future state, looking at different options, then doing like the whole implementation piece, working with the development team, working with project management. So there's a lot to it, but in a nutshell, that's the major piece: identifying a problem and then, looking for solutions to solve that problem at a organizational or business level.
Right. It's kind of funny because it sounds like, oh, well, that's easy. And we can do that with anything. I mean, we can say, oh, brain surgeons just, do brain surgery. We can make it sound simple, but it's so much more than that. So what's interesting, Michael, is when I think about a business analyst or a BA, I'll call you BAs, I think about, and I know there's so much more to it, but my brain automatically goes to someone who's willing to be, to sit with the individuals who are wanting a new project to be implemented or a new system to be implemented. And really sharing, okay, here's what we ultimately want. Here are the results we want. And BAs are really kind of an intermediary between the individual, the client, the internal client who wants the thing, and the individuals, generally programmers, IT, who are going to provide the thing. So it's kind of like, you're a translator, really. That's what always comes to my mind. I know it's so much more than that, but you just have that natural ability to be that for people.
Yes, of course. And so earlier I talked about business analysis. And so when we talk about what a business analyst is, It's exactly what you were saying. The most common thing you'll hear is the business analyst translates between IT and the business, right? We make sure that those two very different languages or those very different perspectives that we try to create a shared vision between them, right? So ultimately, what we have to be masters of is elicitation, which is uncovering things. So in the business world or practical world, you might hear the term gather requirements, but we have to do more than that because we help the customers or the stakeholders understand, like, they have to be able to articulate. Most stakeholders know what their problems are, but they don't know how to articulate it in a way for someone else to understand it. So that's kind of what we do. We help them refine their problems in a way that's meaningful. And we also keep asking questions so that they can to also uncover things that might not be top of mind for them, right? So we have to be masters at asking questions, not just questions of unknowns, but questions that require deeper thought or to take things to the next level or a deeper level, so that we can, one, identify the correct problem, but two, identify a solution that's going to add adequate value.
Right. So, and we talked before, you asked the 5 whys, and really, this is a great example of how I think we don't know what we don't know. And I think people who are, ultimately the ones who are getting the results of whatever project is being performed, they just know, okay, generally speaking, we don't want this, we want this. And there's so much more to it. And you are really understanding, okay, what's the root problem? And often providing a solution that didn't even come to their mind. They just know, I want it fixed. I want it better, right? And a lot of times what I've experienced is that the client will say, oh, I want this to, I'm just thinking of a system implementation. I want this, button to be red, and they're very specific about what they want, when truly, is that really the ultimate solution? So you have to dig to get what's actually going to make the most sense.
Yeah. And, it's one, again, going back to that root cause, because a lot of times what happens is stakeholders, or what we call business people or customers, they have an assumed problem. They assume that this is their problem. So that root cause analysis piece is really important, because a lot of times they think the problem is one thing, but it's really something else. Or they only have a surface level of the problem, but there's really a deeper issue that needs to be addressed first in order to truly solve the problem. For example, I just think of a common request that, stakeholders make. They'll say, oh, I want to be able to see all of, the history of this particular file. I want to see when it started, when it ended, every time a change was made. I want to see the entire history. So they just want this checklist. But I'm like, now, do you really want a screen that has all of these changes? Or do you really want to just know when something happened? So would you rather just have a clean screen with a pop-up if something changes? Or do you really want to open up a screen and see all of these data points that show things that have not changed and things that changed? It was kind of like, well, I really just want to see things that change. Okay, but that's not what you asked for. You know what I mean? So really being able to push back a little bit respectfully and ask questions to really get to the heart of it, right? Not assuming that they know exactly what they want, but just being able to ask questions in a way to help them realize, oh, well, no, this is what I really want, So it's really all.
So you're essentially an onion peeler. What's just striking me, and it's funny that I'm just realizing this now. So really, the work you do, the work I do, and also the work my friend Kat does, who's a matchmaker and dating coach, and I'll get to that. I'll explain a little bit more. It's all kind of the same, but different. So you're peeling an onion and you're helping people understand what they actually need. When I work with people, I'm peeling the onion and helping them better understand themselves in cases that, someone might think, oh, I don't like my life. I need to change everything. Well, but do you really? Which is very similar to what you do. And let's just peel back the onion because maybe it's just small adjustments. And then this is really on top of mind because I just had a conversation for my podcast with my friend Kat yesterday, who's the matchmaker and dating coach. And she is always questioning when people come to her and say, I want someone who's 6 feet tall, 30 years younger than me, and she has to respectfully ask questions and say, okay, tell me more about that. Why do you have this thought that this is what you need? So it's really interesting. I'm just realizing now how similar what each of us does when it's seemingly completely different, but we're all onion peelers in various ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always going back to the why you want this, why you're starting this problem. I mean, why you started this project, why this problem began, why this goal is important, right? So there's always the why that needs to be uncovered in order to get the true value of that we're looking for. Same thing, why do you want someone 30 years younger? Oh, well, because, if she's saying younger men can't keep up with her, well, is it the age or is it the health practices? Maybe you want someone that's more health conscious that can keep up with you. You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily the age. You could have someone 30 years younger than you who is in poor health and still can't keep up. So, you have to really look at that why.
I'm just kind of sitting with this now thinking, wow, that's really interesting. So, okay, what I love about what you do, Michael, and well, lots of things. I think that, training and is really important for any role. What I love about what you're doing is it's something what I love in particular is it's something I had not thought about before. The fact that you make YouTube videos about business analysis, you help people understand that, okay, you might be a business analyst at one company, go to a different company and have very different expectations. You just you help people understand, okay, here's what ultimately needs to be done as a business analyst. I'll help you understand how to apply it and help you understand how different environments are going to have different expectations. And you do it on YouTube. When I met you, I just thought, what? You do YouTube videos? It's just not something that you hear about people doing in the corporate setting, right? So how did you go that route? How did you go from, oh wait, I'm recognizing this about myself. I'm always being asked to train. I should do it on YouTube.
Right. I think what happened was initially when I started, I wanted to focus on getting like the certification tips out there. I thought that would be a good way to circulate some of those tips that I had been presenting and sharing and things like that. But I started recognizing that people started asking me more about the practical stuff, the stuff that they do every day. How do I create this document? How do I do this technique? And so when I got wind of that, I kind of reached out to the community and I had asked them, well, what are you more interested in? Are you interested in certification content or are you interested in techniques? And it was overwhelmingly techniques. I was like, oh, okay. So I shifted more towards the techniques and I really wanted to present it in a way that was simple because a lot of the techniques that we use is so technical. It's so specific. I wanted to simplify things. And I also was very intentional intentional about adding examples. And so you'll notice in my content, some of my earlier videos were like talking head, and I think that's great for a lot of more, high level conversations. But when you are teaching something that people need to use, they need to see the words, they need to see the examples, and they need to see the visuals. So I shifted to more of the presentation and having those actual documents or having those actual diagrams on the screen as I talk through them. And that really resonated with people, because people were like, before I just could not understand this technique, and now it's so clear, it's so simple. And they really like that approach. So that's kind of like how I've been using YouTube, as an engine to really do those more repetitive things that are more like globally recognized, those benchmark techniques and things like that. I actually have a lot of viewers who are actually students that are going through, college and things like that. Like they might have like an IT degree or something like that. And they're looking at the same, type of information. And instead of, watching their professor, they would prefer to watch YouTube or me, because it's explained in a much more simple way than what they might be getting in a lecture. So that's some of the feedback that I get as well. But, just really focusing more towards that practical day-to-day work, the things that business analysts have to do or create on a daily basis. And I really want that to be that YouTube channel to be a resource for the everyday business analyst.
And I think I suspect it's helpful for anyone at whatever level they're at in their career, because so often I think we kind of miss that fundamental stuff, and we reach a point in, maybe it's, when we first start, we're just trying to figure out, okay, where are the bathrooms? Who's this person I'm meeting with? What specifically is required? And we get so caught up in all the details, we kind of stop questioning, well, why am I doing this? What am I actually trying to accomplish? And you get to the point where you don't even know who to ask, because you're a little embarrassed and feel like, well, this is so fundamental, I should know. But everyone's thinking that, right? And I love too that students are watching you, because so many of us graduate from high school and there's this kind of expectation put on us, or at least we feel there is, that we should know exactly what we want to do. But no one actually says, okay, you're thinking, well, first of all, I think there's probably a lot of people that don't even know a business analyst is a thing. They could be. But if they do think that, no one says, okay, here's exactly what that's going to look like. We learn about the concepts, all the theoretical stuff in college, but who knows if you actually want to do that until you're in it, right? So I love that you are reaching students who can. Have there been students, I guess, that felt like, oh, maybe I want to go this route, and then maybe decided against it even because they thought, oh, well, wait a minute, I'm not really digging the fundamentals here. Or maybe people who were just kind of dipping their toe in because maybe they were programmers and they thought, well, I just want to understand BAs more. And then maybe it even helped them recognize the strengths they had and what they naturally did well, and made them realize, well, wait a minute, maybe this is what I actually want to do. But they had been kind of not pushed down the path of being a programmer, but maybe they just thought, well, I like IT stuff. I guess I'm, computer stuff. I'm just going to go down this route without even recognizing that a BA was a possibility. I just said a lot there. So I don't even know if there was a question in there or if I was just telling you, I really like that.
Well, I'll follow up with this. Business analysis has been around a while. I think the concept of it has been around at least since the 80s. But it's still a relatively young profession. So and when I say young, I mean in comparison to a developer, in comparison to a project manager. So most of the time in my career, I'll speak for my career, when I was a business analyst, I was led by a person who has never been a business analyst before, right? And a lot of other professionals have been in that space where no one really understands their role except their peers. So we're coming to a place over the past 20 years or so where there wasn't necessarily the appreciation of the business analyst profession. So organizations didn't necessarily take the necessary steps to properly educate or properly train or formally train their business analysts on those best practices, right? So, some organizations have, and it's not all, but some organizations have taken those steps, but most organizations do not have like a formal business analysis training program. And so most business analysts were coming into business analysis with no experience, or they were like maybe transferred like me. I was transferred from another department of an organization that I was already working in, and I was able to leverage my business knowledge into that BA work. Now, granted, my first couple of years, I was a terrible business analyst, but I didn't know it. I thought I was a good business analyst until, you know what I mean? Until I started looking around like, is there a way to get certified in this thing? Because when you're working with these developers, they have all these certifications, C++ and all this weird stuff. And I'm like, is there a certification for business analysis? And then, I started looking around, and that's when I kind of found out about the BABOK guide and the certifications that they provide. So I read the BABOK guide and I was like, holy smokes, I'm not doing any of this stuff. So, I started trying to create these processes and implement these things. And so essentially, I went down the path of becoming certified. But most of the business analysts that I coach struggle with imposter syndrome because I have had people who have been business analysts for 15 years, 20 years, and they have gotten by on their business knowledge or their ability to do certain business analysis skills, but they still are not confident after all those years as a business analyst. And it's like, why is that? Because they know what they're doing, but they don't know why they're doing it. They don't know why this is important. They don't know the impact is, if we skip the current state analysis, they're not able to connect the dots that can lead to missed requirements because we did not look at what they're doing today. Some people think, oh, well, the current state analysis, we don't need to do that. Let's just focus on building a new solution. Just being able to connect those dots of the reason why we do certain things and the impact of not doing certain tasks that's within the business analysis process is a very key role in being an effective, or it's a very key skill in being a very effective business analyst.
Blowing my mind just right now. So it just hit me. So the fact that you and I have very different roles, but very similar in some ways, in addition to my matchmaker friend. I mean, what the heck? BA, matchmaker, they sound very different. But when you said connect the dots, that made me realize that, each of us is really a dot connector as well. And I think that in general, it feels like, oh, that's just kind of a middleman kind of thing. We can connect the dots on our own, but there is definitely a skill set there. And I can see how someone who maybe doesn't have an appreciation for documenting the current state, it might seem like from someone else's perspective, oh, we already know the current state. Why would we take the time to document that? We already know that. Let's just jump to what we want the future state to be. But it takes someone with your skill set to come in and say, no, you might know the current state. I'm using air quotes right now, but you don't really, because you haven't laid it all out and really taken the time to look at it, analyze it, ask questions from a different perspective. There's so much more. There's so many dots to connect that people don't realize. And I think a lot of times that kind of intermediary role, such as a business analyst, is it feels like, oh, maybe that's unnecessary. And maybe part of the imposter syndrome people have as BAs is, well, am I really necessary? All I'm doing is really translating and talking to people and documenting. Yes, it's absolutely necessary. And I think sometimes that's overlooked because it requires such a specific skill set.
Yes. And people don't realize how much sales is involved, sales, because like you said, they will think, a customer or a stakeholder will think that this activity that I'm doing is unnecessary, but I have to sell to them why this task is needed, why, and what will happen if we skip it, right? So that's, if you don't want to use the word sales, we have to learn how to get buy-in on some of the activities we do. And even, there are hundreds and hundreds of different business analysis techniques. One of the things that a more effective business analyst is able to do is to identify the technique that is needed for this particular task and why. It's very easy to be a BA and say, okay, I'm on a new project. I'm going to do a process map. I'm going to do some user stories and create a BRD, and that's it. Right.
And a BRD is a business requirements document, right?
A business requirements document.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Now, while I will say it is great to have a set benchmark or a set standard of minimum requirements that each project is expected to have. Like if you want to have a BRD or a business requirements document or a solution requirements document or a software specification document. Or if you're agile, you'll have your user stories, right? But it's important to have those other techniques that are serving as inputs into those documents as well. So if I'm dealing with something that's more data oriented, I might need to have something like a data dictionary or a data flow diagram, right? Or maybe an entity relationship diagram. Whereas if I am doing some type of process improvement project, I'll definitely probably have be using BPMN diagrams or maybe even activity diagrams. Or if I'm trying to look for wasted tasks, I might use a value stream map, right? So you have to be able to look at the project, what you're trying to solve in the project, and be able to identify the techniques and the tools that's going to enable you to solve those problems, because not every technique is warranted or needed for every project.
And yeah, I suspect that a lot of people who you're working with are thinking, okay, I know all this. Why do you have to spell it out and take the time to meet with me and ask me questions about what I already know, right? Because I think a lot of us think, okay, well, I should be able to figure this out on my own. Why do I need this guy coming in and asking me these questions? It's unnecessary when really that's where the magic actually happens. So, okay, so Michael, I have I worked with a client, actually a couple, who really love to teach. And they've recognized this about themselves, but their brains automatically went to, well, I don't want to be a teacher at a middle school or high school, and our brains automatically go there because we kind of have this checklist in our brains of okay, here are all the things I can be when I grow up. But you are teaching, you are training, you are translating and doing all these things in the business analysis world. So you created this for yourself. You saw a need. You recognized what you naturally did well, what you enjoy, and now you're doing it on YouTube. And I just think that's so cool.
And can I tell you how this all manifested? So when I was in my early 20s, I wanted to be a CEO. Of course, I didn't know what it would look like. I just thought I would be a CEO of a company, a already established company. I just thought I would move up the ladder. But I had said, I want to be a CEO. I want to be a CEO, whatever. And then as I got into the whole training thing, because like I said, as I moved through my career, I was always doing training. At some point, I had came to the conclusion, well, I want to be a teacher. And like your friends, I didn't want to be a middle school teacher. I didn't want to be a high school teacher because I was thinking about, those aren't always that lucrative. So I was like, well, maybe I'll be a college professor. Okay, yeah, I'll do that. I'll be a college professor. So in the back of my mind, I had wanted to be a CEO. And then the other back of my mind, I wanted to be a college professor. Now, that also encouraged me to continue on my education. So that's what led to me getting the doctoral degree. And then I didn't realize this until after I started YouTube that I was actually, well, I knew I was a CEO when I started my company, but when I started having viewers reach out to me who were in college and they were calling me professor, I'm like, wait a minute, what? Why are you calling me professor? Yeah, they would call me Professor Doc, Professor White, and I would be like, what? And so when I saw the amount of students that were actually watching my content, I'm like, holy smokes, I'm actually teaching college. Well, I'm not a formal college professor. I'm teaching college students. So many of them tell me how I help them on their, exams and things like that. And I'm just like, holy smokes, this is so crazy how this all unfolded without even realizing it,
And you were open to it. It wasn't, oh, I can't do that because I'm a BA in the corporate world and this is what I need to do. I mean, you had to open yourself up to it. This is making me think too, Michael. So I when I was in college, I went into accounting and finance, and I was an accounting tutor at one point. And Michael, I can't tell you how bad of an accounting tutor I was. So I can do accounting, right? But I'm the kind who I need to kind of process it and kind of figure it out. I can't explain accounting. And so I made a really good friend out of it. My friend, Dave, we became buddies because I was tutoring him. But I couldn't really explain it. And, there were things I wasn't like completely incompetent, but mostly I enjoyed meeting with Dave and enjoyed that time connecting. And, we became friends as a result. So it wasn't terrible, but I didn't enjoy explaining accounting. It wasn't a gift of mine. And so there was part of me that I didn't consciously think this, but I just thought, oh, I sucked at that. I'll never be able to teach anybody anything. It wasn't conscious. But so then it didn't even really occur to me throughout my corporate career that I was teaching and coaching in a different way. I just wasn't a teacher or an accounting tutor, right? And so now, but I kind of ruled that out. And in fact, there was, I don't know, at some point in my career, someone said something about being an accounting adjunct. And I thought, oh no, I can't even be a tutor, right? But now I'm an adjunct and I teach leadership. And I love it. And it's something I'm good at, but I can't teach a certain thing. So I think so often we just kind of rule things out because of an experience, and it's not even conscious. I did not think at any point, oh, I cannot teach, right, consciously, but I know that was in my brain somewhere. And, it's not, oh, I don't want to teach geography to middle school students, so I can't be a teacher. Sometimes our brains probably go there too. But you just naturally became what you kind of leaned into. And then looking back, you connected the dots and thought, oh, wait a minute, people are calling me professor and I'm teaching and I'm really good at working with people and explaining this whole business analysis thing. So that's so exciting. It's so cool.
It really is. I was excited. I was like, holy smokes, this is great.
What happened? How did that happen? But you just figured out how to be open to it. You didn't say, oh, well, I'm not going to do a YouTube video. Who does YouTube videos? You just, opened up to it. And now it's like, oh, everything played out the way it was supposed to. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah. And I think another key to that was, even though I had wanted to be a professor and I wanted to be a CEO, two totally not connected career paths. I didn't question like, now how am I going to make this work? I just said that that's what I wanted, right? I didn't have that resistance of, well, this is never going to happen. But I was open to it. I said that that's what I wanted, and I held on to that, and the universe just made it happen for me.
And we so often just get stuck in the how, and we think, well, I don't know how I would do that. And then we just kind of don't. We don't do anything because we don't know how. But it all kind of opens up as we take action, as we move along. Okay, so I have a couple more questions for you. When you, Michael, decided, hey, I'm going to make YouTube videos, did anyone along the way question that and think, what the heck are you doing, Michael? Or not? Maybe nobody did.
Not really, because I think the people that I told, which was like my friends, a couple of friends. Well, first of all, when I first started, I didn't tell anybody. Like, I just did it. And then afterwards, I told a couple of friends who knew that I had started a business. But most of them don't know what business analysis is. You know, I explain it to them the best that I can. But, you know, if you're not in the industry, you're not in the industry. So most people don't take that extra effort to try to figure out what it is. So people didn't really question me. They were just like, okay, cool. You know what I mean? So I didn't have a lot of resistance or embarrassment about it. I just did it. And the people that I communicated with the most in regards to my YouTube channel was people who were in the business analysis world, specifically the people that were in the IIBA world. IIBA is the International Institute of Business Analysis, for anybody that doesn't know. So they were just seeing me as a resource. They weren't like, who is this person? Because a lot of the bigger names in business analysis at that time that were teaching like IIBA stuff, they weren't on YouTube. So people were kind of like interested in, oh, there's a IIBA resource or a person talking about the Babot guide on YouTube. So that was kind of like my little, dart into the space right before I expanded. Even still, there's a lot of different business analysis pages out there or channels out there. But it's not like a overly saturated YouTube space. So I think because there was the demand there, it wasn't a lot of resistance at all, I don't think.
And actually, even if that space was saturated, you each have your own style, and each person on YouTube is going to resonate differently with each person. So I think so often saturation kind of prevents us from doing certain things too, because we think, oh, there are enough BAs on YouTube or whatever, right? But everybody's going to resonate differently. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. Tell us, Michael, and certainly for everyone listening, if you're interested in certification, we will get to that. So no worries. But I would love for you to answer the question, what would the current version of Michael tell the younger version of Michael?
I would say don't wait for permission. I think that when I was younger, and this is really funny because I just talked about how like I was always like to ask questions and things like that. But at the same time, I was also a little bit shy. So what I would do is I would wait for other people to maybe start asking their questions, or I would see if anybody else had any questions they want to ask us, because I didn't want to seem stupid or like I didn't know anything. So over time, you don't have to ask for permission for anything. I mean, no, I don't want to say it like that, because there are things you should get permission for. But yeah, but in terms of your career, you know what I mean? Your expanding your knowledge, you don't have to ask for permission to ask a question. You just ask. I think as adults, we should have a filter of what's right and wrong. So use that to the best of your capability. But you don't need permission to ask questions. You don't need permission to step out and do your own thing. You don't need permission to think outside of the box. Sometimes you can just do it. And if it's wrong, you'll know. You know what I mean? But some people are so stuck in waiting for permission that it just never happens. So don't wait for permission, and don't wait for the perfect timing, because there's rarely a perfect timing for anything. Like, if you want to do it, go out and do it. So I do believe in divine timing and divine intervention. So if it's meant to be, the timing will be right and the cards will all fall into the right places. So that's what I would say. Don't wait. Just do it. I mean, give it some thought, plan about it. If you're spiritual, pray about it like I would do. I'm very connected to God. But at the same time, because I had that guidance, that internal guidance or that spiritual guidance, I didn't need that permission from other people. Have you ever had that person that's like, oh, I'm thinking about doing a business, or I'm thinking about teaching, or I'm thinking about coaching, I'm thinking about starting a YouTube channel, and they're asking everyone they know and getting their feedback, getting their opinion. Those people aren't going to be the people that's your customer. Why are you asking them? You know what I mean? So just do it, Now, if it's something like you figured out a way to test the market, yeah, definitely get that research. If you're figuring out like, okay, you've identified a customer base and you figured out a way to use YouTube or Twitter or something like that to get a pulse on the demand for something. Yes, definitely do that research, but don't ask all your friends and your family, do you think I should start this YouTube? Do you think I should start this coaching business? Do you think I should do this job? You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to be the group of people that's going to drive your wealth or your success. So don't get permission. Don't wait for permission from those people, right? Just do it.
Oh, that's so good, Michael. And yeah, I plus the people who are close to us, who we generally look to for permission, they like the version of ourselves that we already are. And so I think unintentionally they're going to have fears of us changing in some way, doing something that might not work out. So they're going to project that on us, and it's not intentional, but just like, well, why would you? It could be that maybe your mom would have said, well, why would you do that, Michael? And then you'd feel like, oh, I don't have permission. Well, of course your mom doesn't understand why you would do a YouTube video about, being certified as a VA. Why would she understand? She has no background in that. Does she? I don't think she does, but she might. So we're looking for people who aren't even interested. They don't have the same level of interest we do. Why would they be fully supportive? And then we wait and think, oh, well, it's a dumb idea. No, it's just not what that person would do. If that person would do it, they would just be doing it. Oh, I get all amped up about this, Michael. I didn't mean to do that. But yeah, anyway, I love all of that. That's so good.
That's also, can I add to your previous question about what I would tell my younger self?
Yes.
I also would add that there is no such thing as job security in corporate world. I think one thing that prevents people from starting a business or starting even a side hustle is they like the security, the quote unquote security of a job. And that it's nice while it lasts, having insurance and things like that is nice, but there's no security in that. They can easily walk you into the office and walk you out of the building any day. no reason, And so what happened to me was I had been working at a bank that was a bank for over 100 years. So I thought I was a business analyst there. I was getting promoted and all that nice stuff. I was an officer there. And one day they called all of us into a conference and basically told us that they were selling our bank to Fifth Third. You know what I'm saying? So I was completely shocked that they were closing down. So, it was a hit, So at that point, that's when I made the decision. Do I want to start looking for another job, or do I want to start focusing on this quote unquote dream that I had been kind of having in the back of my mind, right? So that's what led me, at that point, that's when I started working on setting up the business analysis doctor, or my training program at the time. I didn't know what it was called. But I was like, I think I'm going to take a step to see if I can make this work. I had a severance and all that stuff to give me several months. So I was like, this is the time. So just to make a long story short, just knowing that there's no real security in what we call corporate jobs. There's more security, I would say, than entrepreneurship, yes, but there's not as much security as we tend to think.
Right. There's the illusion of security. And there's definitely more consistency. I mean, this is something I still am working through, is just there's so many ups and downs, and there's ups and downs in a stable, consistent job too, but they're just different. They're bigger ups and downs maybe. So yeah, it's not a matter of, okay, stay doing what you're doing or start a new business. But I think it often doesn't, because we have that illusion of security. Sometimes it doesn't occur to us that, well, we can do this other thing in addition, right? It's just, we have this black and white thinking that it's like, okay, it's either this or this, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I love too, Michael, that you said that you just started doing the training and you didn't know what you were going to call it, because that in itself could hold us back. Well, I need to know the name of it. I think especially coming from corporate, I realized that, and this was something it took me a while to realize, that because in the corporate environment, you need to have all your ducks in a row, because you're presenting to people and saying, okay, here's the plan, here's when it's going to be done, da, 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 and especially as a business analyst, right? But that's not the way life actually works. You might not even know the name of whatever you're doing before you start doing it. And projects in general don't actually work that way. We might want them to in this perfect world. But so yeah, I love that you started and you didn't know the name. And yeah, and look at you now. You're the doctor.
Yeah.
Truly.
And another thing, that's it. That's it. But, another thing about anyone who is in the corporate world, what I would say is I believe in, operating in excellence no matter where I'm at. Whether you're at McDonald's, or not to say that there's anything wrong with McDonald's, but if you're at, a fast food restaurant, you should always operate in excellence. Learn about the business of where you're at. Because one thing I tried to do, I always wanted to learn about my role, but I also wanted to learn about the upstream roles and the downstream roles and where my role fit within the big picture. And I wanted to understand my industry and how it operated, because I spent years and years and years in the mortgage industry. So I wanted to understand the life of a loan, where do the loans come from? How do we get business? And so I just really wanted to understand how the business that I was working at operated. And that came so much in handy. I mean, I do have a business degree, so that helps. But when I look back, there was so much training and rearing in my corporate career just because I was curious. and I was asking questions. I was trying to really understand how that business worked, how they got leads, how they went through the funnel of bringing a lead to a customer. What was the life of a customer? What are the touch points? How does the organization become more efficient? I had to learn all about margins. How does our company keep money? How do they pass, savings down? All those things I had to learn. I was learning at the time just because I was curious. And then when I became a business owner, I was able to take some of that stuff and apply to my own business. So I was like, oh my goodness, thank God I was paying attention. Because,
well, and the fact that you were too, I mean, that's just a natural strength of yours, just to ask questions, be curious, because not everyone is. And that just translates into being an excellent business analyst and business owner and all the things. So just recognizing that you were such a curious person is huge. So I have one more question for you. Where can people find you? Because I know there are people who are going to be interested in getting certified and watching your YouTube channel. And you should also mention the podcast. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Okay, so first, my website is the best place. It is thebadoc.com. So that's THEBADOC.com. That is where you can learn all about me, my offerings, my trainings, and things like that. Everything's there. Also, definitely check out my YouTube channel. That is the Business Analysis Doctor dash IIBA certification. But of course, there's much more training than just the certification training. So definitely check that out. It's a growing page. And that is where I will be adding my podcast episodes. So, which Sherry is my first guest on that. So definitely check that out once it's posted. That'll be in the next few days. But definitely check that out. It is a great resource. People, it's a growing channel. People tend to like it from my perspective anyway. And also feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Michael White. It's Dr. Michael White under LinkedIn. So you can search for that. And those are the key places that I'm most active. So YouTube and LinkedIn are the places that I'm really the most active.
Fantastic. This was so much fun. And Michael, so last week we recorded your podcast and this week, obviously mine. So maybe we'll have to talk next week, touch base, because this has been a lot of fun.
Yes, absolutely. For sure.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anything else you would like to share with anyone listening? Michael, you have so much wisdom to share.
Just if you are interested in anything related to business analysis where you want to either become a business analyst or elevate your competency as a business analyst, please reach out to me. Another frequent type of training that I do is from people who are not business analysts, but they work with business analysts. So adjacent roles, right, such as developers or project managers or product owners who work with business analysts in a way, but they want to learn more about it. So they just want that high level understanding just so that they can work with them more effectively, work with the business analysts more effectively, and understand their role more effectively.
Oh, that's so great. And just understand, okay, what's the purpose of this person meeting with me or, whatever. Oh, that's so good. That's such a good point. Such a good point, Michael. Michael, thank you so much for being here today. This was so fun. Absolutely. And really enjoyed the podcast with you last week too. And I just really enjoyed this.
Yes,
and also, I just want to share with everyone that it was just a big birthday for you. So if anyone wants to send Michael birthday wishes, feel free to do that too.
Thank you. Yes, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sherry.
Or gifts, whatever. Okay. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me, Sherry. This has been so great.
So fun. Okay. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Dash Mindset Podcast. And we will see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to the Dash Mindset Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player, tell your friends, and leave us a review. Follow me on my social media platforms highlighted in the show notes, and get in touch with me at thedashmindset.com. Share the topics you'd like me to explore in future episodes. Thanks again for listening to the Dash Mindset Podcast. We'll see you next time. Design and differentiate your Dash your way and make today amazing.